Our Campaign for Fair Finance has done recently some very original nationwide polling and research, the results of which will be issued fairly soon. Some of it is quite shocking in the sense that there's a whole cohort of people a cut above universal credit, but who can't borrow £1,000, even paying 25% APR. So universal credit doesn't help them. But what do we do about, there's nothing in the budget about that. What do we do about the broken finance and banking market that still isn't serving people?
Well, I think your Fair Finance initiative is a very important one to try and open up financial services to people who have difficulty accessing it. And bearing in mind that the people who have difficulty accessing finance are not necessarily who you would think. And what can you do? Well, Justine Greening, Member of Parliament for Putney, has proposed ensuring that payments for rent count towards your credit rating, because it's quite difficult for people who are renting to build up the same credit rating as people who have a mortgage.
Sure.
And that it only needs a minor technical adjustment and they have a similar credit rating. And actually, if you've paid your rent for 5 years every month, that's just as good, shows you're just as a reliable person as if you've paid a mortgage for 5 years. So I think there are technical things that can be done. And then there's the issue of bank balance sheets, which have been slowly repaired after the financial crisis, and risk appetite.
Slowly repaired at the cost of our credit, in the sense of the IMF announcement, because a large part of that is the bailing out of the banks.
Well,
course, yeah.
The banks had to be bailed out.
Yeah,
that
sure.
The destruction to the economy, if the banks hadn't been bailed out, would have been
Terrible.
much greater than it was.
Terrible.
Yes, and would have hit domestic savers and would have hit people randomly, that people who had taken out a mortgage but hadn't completed the transaction would have found that they could have had tens, if not hundreds of thousands of pounds in their account, which they lost, but still owned the countervailing loan. So bailing out the banks was the right thing to do.
Absolutely.
And would have been devastating if it hadn't happened.
Absolutely. In our research, we come across over and over again that there are many, many things that should be done to protect consumers, especially in the financial services area, and they don't get done because of politics, to put it bluntly. Things get compromised, traded off, put aside, etc. Do you think there's a role for somebody, a consumer minister or such, to be a non-political, independent expert in the financial services area, that can step in and say, as some new policy is being initiated, that this practically simply isn't going to work, however many votes it may get? This is what Eamon Holmes was on about last night on his program, is that sometimes it seems to be all about votes, and the consumer is the last one really to be considered. So we're very adamant about that. We can see examples of it everywhere. The fallout in the Wonga depositors, for example, who are now going to be made to pay debts, probably to hedge funds that buy their loan book, who actually would have been in a position not only not to have to repay the debt, but probably to get the principal and interest they paid back for being sold loans where they didn't meet the affordability test. So that's going by the wayside. If there was somebody who could push for legislation that these people who are proven cases of affordability not being considered would rank above secured creditors, there would be some equality restored to the situation. Nobody seems to do that. It's all politicians negotiating things back and forth. And in the financial services area, certainly, we think the consumer suffers.
This is always the argument for a technical bureaucracy rather than democracy. That this shocking thing called politics intervenes and people do things because they want to win votes, and that harms consumers. Well, no, it doesn't actually, because who are voters? Voters are consumers. Politicians are on the side of consumers. And no, I don't think there is a technocratic solution to these problems of fair-minded bureaucrats who will get the decisions right. Indeed, I think the whole trend in recent decades has been wrong. It's taken away accountability. There have been more of these unaccountable, unelected officials who make decisions, like the Financial Conduct Authority, which is hardly accountable to Parliament or to ministers at all. And if something goes wrong, who do you complain to? Who gets redress of grievance for you? So no, I think that's the wrong way to go. I think that politicians, actually subject to the requirement to win a democratic mandate, are more likely to get these decisions right than a fair-minded technocrat.
And independent authority, yeah.
We've got millions of, well, not millions, but we have so many independent authorities, and they turn out to be unaccountable bureaucracies who make decisions that you can't then get overturned because there's no ability to get redress of grievance, and I don't think this system works.